Ukraine is getting pummeled by another wave of Russian airstrikes targeting energy infrastructure. Air raid sirens rang out across the country today in what Kyiv is calling one of the biggest missile attacks there since the start of the war. The capital, the northern, central and southern regions all hit. The mayor of Kharkiv is describing the damage there as colossal, and he says there's no electricity, heat or water. Ukraine says 76 missiles have already been launched, and an Air Force spokesman says for the first time, Russia has used strategic bombers. Ukraine's state energy provider says an emergency mode has been activated as critical infrastructure has been targeted. CNN's Will Ripley has more now from Kyiv.
The Kyiv City Military Administration says the Ukrainian capital has survived one of the most massive missile attacks since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Now, I'm standing in a square where you can see destroyed vehicles from the beginning of the war. We actually can't take you to the scene of these attacks because the targets were critical infrastructure, and Ukraine has very strict rules about filming and showing these locations. They don't want to tip off the Russians to what areas they might have hit and what areas they might have missed. But in this case, Kyiv says that most of the missiles never reached their targets because they say out of around 40 missiles that Russia fired directly at Kyiv, which is a huge number even for locals who've been living here throughout this full-scale war for nearly 10 months now, they say they shot down 37 of them. There were, however, 3 explosions reported here in Kyiv, both on the east and west banks of the river, 2 of them in the east, 1 in the west. There are reports across Ukraine of entire cities plunged into darkness as a result of these attacks, which didn't just hit here in Kyiv. They also hit to the south in Odesa and to the north in Sumy and Kharkiv. But here in the capital, there were tens of thousands of people sheltering in place, hiding in underground subway stations, waiting for an all clear. And there were sounds of explosions. We actually heard them this morning as we were getting ready to pack up and go on a road trip. The air raid sirens went off, and there were some loud explosions that could be heard in our vicinity. CNN staff who lived even closer to the scenes of the explosions said they also heard the sound of the air defense systems being activated, shooting down presumably those dozens of missiles that were headed towards the Ukrainian capital. The number of dead and injured, of course, those reports are always fluid, but as of now, we know at least 2 people killed, at least 5 people injured, including children. And UNICEF just days ago warned that these ongoing Russian attacks, this constant bombardment of the civilian power infrastructure, is putting the physical and mental health of nearly every single child here in Ukraine at desperate risk. Will Ripley, CNN, Kyiv, Ukraine.
Oh, thanks to Will Ripley for that. Well, a U.S. announcement on whether it will send Patriot missiles to Ukraine is expected at any time, and it comes amid these escalating Russian strikes on civilian infrastructure. The Pentagon says the Kremlin does not have a say in the matter and will not dictate what security assistance the U.S. provides to Ukraine.
I find it ironic and very telling that officials from a country that brutally attacked its neighbor in an illegal and unprovoked invasion through a campaign that is deliberately targeting and killing innocent civilians and destroying civilian infrastructure, that they would choose to use words like provocative to describe defensive systems that are meant to save lives and protect civilians.
Russia is warning of unpredictable consequences if Washington does deploy the advanced air defense system to Ukraine in what's being described as another provocative move by the United States. Well, CNN's Barbara Starr joins